Hey, this is Mandy from Mending Mandy. Thank you so much for tuning into my channel. I just want to say, as a survivor of abuse, my heart really with this channel is to help fellow survivors on their healing journey. I'm not a counselor or a psychologist, I'm just a girl on the mend. So today I just wanted to talk about the isolation of abuse and how it's used to control the victim and continue this cycle of abuse. So isolation is basically keeping alone or keeping separate. And many abusers use this tactic. And if you really think about isolation, it's predatory in nature. I find that a lot of abusers actually are predatory and they use tactics that are as well. And if you think about it, there are many animals in the animal kingdom that use isolation to take down their prey. So for example, I researched male lions, and a lot of the male lions, as opposed to females, will stalk and then corner their prey, or they'll go up in a group in a herd and isolate one to take down. And the reason for that, quite frankly, is because it's easier to take down one animal than it is a herd. And as you think about yourself, it's easier to take you down emotionally, physically, spiritually, physically, if you are separated from the rest of your herd or people that love you that can help you out in that situation. So there's many different ways that an abuser isolates, and one of them is stalking. So for me, it was that my physical radius was controlled, and definitely my sphere of influence was also controlled, as we'll talk about later through the video. But for example, I was controlled in a sense through stalking, in that I needed to ask permission to go places, and I needed to text every time I went one place to another. And it was just a way for my abuser to keep tabs on me. I'll call her Kay. So yeah, Kay would just keep tabs. She wanted to know where we were at all times and would get angry if we didn't text her that we were at the grocery store when we were hanging out with a friend, and then we went to Walmart, and then we went back home. And in reality, we weren't going very many places because upstate New York is very rural. Anyway. But that's what I mean when I say stalking. So another way that was really over the top as well with this kind of behavior was I had a computer security program that she installed on my computer that was actually meant for children, and it was basically to block any site that I went to that she didn't approve of or contained certain amounts of, like, I don't know, it could be even Facebook. I wasn't allowed to go on social media. So she installed this program as an administrator on my computer, and every time I went to any kind of site, anything I searched was automatically emailed back to her computer. She could see everything I did. So it's really embarrassing when I was actually in college and she had this program on my computer when I was 20, and I wasn't allowed to take it off. It was password protected. And I went to my IT class, and the professor needed to get on my computer to help me with something. He needed to go to a specific website, and oh my gosh, the mortification. He comes over, types it in, and then there was this little Dalmatian with the stop sign. Are you sure you want to go there? And then I had to type in an explanation why I was going there to that website. And he was like, what is this? In front of the whole class. And I just died internally. That day I died. No, just kidding. But anyway, that is that's a form of stalking. Another way that maybe this happens to you as well is maybe you have to be with a certain person going anywhere. For us, that was true. It's almost like we had ushers, because her brothers, who were about 5 years older than us, we were probably 18 to 20. She started doing this even more, was she would send her brothers with us to go places like concerts or the mall or prom even. So that's a way that she kind of kept tabs on us. She could trust her brothers that, we weren't going to get into any trouble with them. And certainly no boys would approach us with other men around. So those are all ways that I was stalked. And you may have different ways that you're stalked, but it's stalking. It's keeping constant tabs. And it's different than a healthy, hey, where are you? You haven't been home. You said you were going to be home 2 hours ago. That's different. So this stalking is excessive and just like controlling. The second way is limited contact with the outside world. They limit your contact with other people, with even strangers, because they could become an outside threat. Perhaps you make friends and these friends try to help you if you mention that you feel that you're being abused. So an example of this is Kay had made it a rule that I was only allowed to talk to her or her mother whenever we had a conflict. She would say that I wasn't able to talk to any counselors. We didn't go to counselors, any friends, any family. It was a way that I really was isolated from the outside world. It was a way that she kept this secretive and under wraps. I was also not allowed to go to counseling, as I touched on. We weren't allowed to go to counseling, and this is important for me especially because I had gone through a lot of trauma between the age of 0 and 14. My twin and I were adopted, and then our grandparents, who we call our parents, took us in, and there was just so much baggage that came along with that, let alone my grandparents / parents dying, and then us having to live with this person who was just a friend of the family for all those years. So counseling was so pivotal, and I was denied that because she wanted me to be isolated from the outside world, especially a professional counselor. Another way that she really walled me off to the outside world was preventing me from joining honor societies, college, any kind of club really that wasn't church related. And that's going to be also intertied with spiritual abuse later. But that's also a way that you can make it so you don't make friends, you don't, increase your sphere of influence, because for Kay, it was like, God forbid, we get any new ideas, I don't know, that maybe we're being abused. So those are ways that I was isolated from the outside world. Isolating from friends and family. And this one is even more so important because you should be able to rely on friends and family to assist you in times of need. You should be, in theory. I'm a little bitter about this, and I'll tell you why in another video. But basically, Kay did this also to extended family. Like, we weren't allowed to see extended family as much. For example, there was a side of the family that she wouldn't really allow us to see because she said they're rebellious, they're, drunkards, they're all these horrible things that weren't necessarily true. I look back now and I'm like, they were just regular people, but we weren't allowed to see them. And another interesting thing was she would even split my twin up and I when we would argue with her. So if we got into an argument, she would just talk to one twin at a time. And I think that's much like she didn't want us to collaborate stories, or, because when you're being gaslit, it's easier to take one person out at a time. Like, because if we were together when she was talking to us, it would be more of, hey, do you remember this, Ashley? And, it'd be like, no, that's not how it happened. And we could keep our sanity that way. So, but she split us up so we couldn't collaborate. We couldn't exchange facts. Another thing that was done for me was Kay didn't tell my godparents, who I had a pretty close relationship with, a good relationship with since I was 7 months old, because they took us while we were being adopted. She didn't tell my godparents that my parents had died until a year later. And I think that was really to keep us from them, because they might have taken us. They would have absolutely taken us so that Kay didn't. And also it's severing those ties, those family, those friends. Another way that we were isolated with that is Kay would tell us whenever we went over to our godparents' house, which was only like once a year that she allowed, that she didn't want us to go back because they were spoiling us. You know, we would act differently when we came home from our godparents' house. We were more attitudey, we were on edge with Kay, but it's because we felt loved at our godparents' house and not loved at Kay's house. So she made us stop going as much, and she said we couldn't go very often, and she would try to deter us from going, even though they only lived an hour and a half away. So those were some ways that Kay isolated me from my family and friends to really, you know, keep me in the abusive cycle. The next way that abusers can keep you isolated, which happened to me, was feeding dislike. Basically, kind of like in high school. It's like, you should stay away from her because she is rude, you know? So things like that. Just bad mouthing, basically. And this is also part of emotional manipulation, which I covered in another video. But it's basically, you know, making you see from their worldview, oh yeah, I shouldn't like my friend because they're this, which is what happened. So for me, one example is that Kay badmouthed one of my best friends that I knew since I was 9 in my teenage years, and Kay would say, oh, you shouldn't hang out with your friend, she's so rebellious, she doesn't love God. And because I was really religious and that's what I wanted, to love God. And she would just badmouth this friend. The funny thing is, if you knew my friend, my dear friend, we're still friends to this day. And she's not rebellious. She's not this God hater person. She is one of the sweetest, most open-minded people I've ever met. And it's just so funny to me and I kick myself. Anyway, it's funny to me because Kay was telling me things that Jen, my friend, was not. So anyway, another way that you become isolated is, I had mentioned it before, but there was a Christian counselor debacle, actually. The one time that we did go to a counselor, and I know I said that we didn't, but that this counselor, this Christian one, was not a certified counselor, and there's a big difference. So we went to this Christian counselor. That was the only one Kay finally caved on us going to. And what happened with that was, the counselor finally told Kay in a session, we were only a few sessions in, that she was wrong. We never went back. So then Kay said that the Christian counselor didn't know what she was talking about, she was incompetent, she was wrong, and she didn't like her. So we never went back. Another example of feeding dislike is Kay would pick and choose who we hung out with, you know, what friends we were allowed to hang out with. And it was mostly, like I've said, rooted in religious reasons. And that's another reason she didn't let us hang out with that whole one side of the family that I had mentioned earlier. So that is a way of feeding dislike. Oh, they're not for you, you know, and that's what she did with all these people. So that's feeding dislike. That happened a lot to me. That may be happening to you as well, where the person that could be your abuser is telling you, oh, don't hang out with them, don't hang out with them. They're keeping your sphere your herd very close-knit to them and you, so they can prey on you easier. Next way, big one for me, jealousy, which is self-explanatory. In my experience, abusers are pretty dang insecure. And they're afraid of you taking away whatever relationships they have away, yes. But I also found, not only that, jealousy is definitely used as an isolation method. And it's done by making wedges between you and other people. So if they can create enough jealousy to make you not want to hang out with someone, then they've done their job. For example, if I get so jealous of my husband's relationship with a friend and I give him hell for it, eventually he'll stop hanging out with that friend. It's an unhealthy way to control someone. So how that happened to me was, Kay was very possessive of her stepdaughter. And so I don't really feel that I got close to the stepdaughter as much as I would have wanted to. So, she would take her away when I was holding her when she was a baby. She's significantly younger than me. But she would take her away when I was holding her. She would, blame me when she got hurt, or she would, do these little spiteful things to show that she was jealous. She, the little girl would hug me, and then, Kay would get super jealous, offended, just small, petty stuff that really drove home to me, okay, she's jealous of this. I need to create emotional space between myself and this poor, innocent little girl, my sister. I called her my sister. And she still is. Anyway, another way that Kay did this was she was very jealous, oh my gosh, and increasingly jealous of any relationship I had with her husband. So the thing was here, Kay had invited my sister and I to be a part of their family, call them mom and dad, but when push came to shove, she was very jealous of me and her husband, her husband was in his 30s and I was 14, and she accused me of having a crush on him, and she would explode at me in anger because I shouldn't be having a crush on her husband. I was 14. I didn't have a crush on no 30-year-old man. I just wanted a dad again. She, as I got older, would say, you can't be alone with my husband in the house because that's, an appearance of evil, is what she said. There's a Bible verse that's like, avoid the appearance of evil. She would say that I was too womanly to hang out with him, but my twin was allowed to hang out with him because she wasn't as womanly as I was. I wasn't allowed to hug him, and when I did, I felt the daggers on my back. And I wasn't allowed to go anywhere with him alone, even if we just ran to the dump. Apparently the dump is a hot spot, guys. Anyway, so that really drove a wedge between her husband, who was supposed to be a father figure, and that my little sister, I call her my little sister, it grew a wedge there. So here we have this family with just like these walls being built around me, and where it's like I can't even feel that I can contact the people in my own family. I can't talk to them. It creates borders, and you're alone, again, isolated within your own walls. So it's a very effective tool, and I didn't really realize it until I was making this video. So these are just some of the ways that I found abusers can isolate you to keep you in the cycle, to keep you under control. So we discussed stalking, limiting the outside contact, outside world, limited contact with friends and family, feigning dislike, and jealousy. And there are so many. This is not an exhaustive list. If you know any or you have any experience in this and you want to comment below, please do. Please feel free. I'd love to read some comments and to really connect with my viewers. You're really important to me. That's why I wanted to do this to begin with. So if you think that someone's being isolated or controlled, I just urge you to reach out to them carefully. If someone comes to mind, you don't have to talk about it, but a lot of times our instinct is right in what we think about abuse. So deep down, we don't want to believe it, but just tread carefully. But then again, please do contact that person and see how they're doing, get a feel for it. I'll be posting links below for abuse hotlines, and things like that. Please see a professional counselor. It is so important to get help. And yes, it's good if you can find someone you trust, a friend, pastor, family member, but be careful, because there are people out there who you can't really trust them with your abuse. And this will be for another video, but I definitely had where I trusted a family member, I trusted a pastor, and I trusted friends, and it all just was one big betrayal. It'll be another video. Just be careful, but get help, and if you can get professional counseling, seek it out, please. And like I said, trust your instinct. You're not dumb. You're not worthless. You're not something to be thrown away. If you feel a little voice inside of you saying, help me, you know, if you feel that something's off, follow that. I didn't for so long. I always knew deep down that something wasn't right. And I ignored it because it's so hard to break out of all of the abuse that you're experiencing. But you're worth it. Please, get help. You're worth more. So with that said, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video. And please like, comment, or subscribe if you want to see more. And thanks again.